Why did Japanese pilots dread the sight of the F6F Hellcat soaring through the Pacific skies during World War II? How did a fighter plane that was hastily designed and rushed into production to counter the legendary Mitsubishi A6M0 end up destroying more enemy aircraft than any other Allied naval fighter, boasting a staggering kill-to-loss ratio that even overshadowed the vaunted F4U Corsair? And why, despite being produced in enormous quantities, over 12,000 units built in just a few short years, did it play such a pivotal role in shattering Japan's aerial supremacy, ensuring that the Imperial Japanese Navy's air arm never regained its footing? We're going to dive deep into all of that today, unraveling the gripping story of the Grumman F6F Hellcat and the courageous pilots who turned it into a legend of the skies. The Hellcat's origins trace back to the uneasy interwar period and the early days of America's involvement in the global conflict. In the late 1930s, as tensions simmered in the Pacific, the U.S. Navy recognized the growing threat posed by Japan's advanced fighter aircraft. The Mitsubishi A6M0, with its exceptional maneuverability, long range, and lightweight construction, was already proving itself in conflicts like the Second Sino-Japanese War. American intelligence reports painted a picture of a plane that could outturn, outclimb, and outrange anything the Navy had in its arsenal at the time. The Grumman F4F Wildcat, the Navy's frontline carrier-based fighter, was rugged and reliable, but it was slower and less agile than the Zero. Pilots in early skirmishes over China and later at Pearl Harbor learned this the hard way, so the Navy issued a call for a new fighter that could go toe-to-toe with the Zero and win. Grumman Aircraft Engineering Corporation, already a trusted supplier with the Wildcat, stepped up. In June 1941, just months before the attack on Pearl Harbor, they signed a contract to develop the XF6F1 prototype. This wasn't starting from scratch. Grumman drew on lessons from the Wildcat's design, aiming for something bigger, faster, and more powerful. Initially, the prototype was fitted with the Wright R2600 twin cyclone engine, delivering about 1,700 horsepower. But as combat reports trickled in from the Pacific, tales of Zeros dancing around Wildcats in dogfights, the engineers realized they needed more grunt. They made a crucial swap, installing the massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp radial engine, a 2,000 horsepower behemoth that was already powering land-based fighters like the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt and the Vought F4U Corsair. That engine change transformed the Hellcat. It gave it the muscle to climb quickly, dive like a hawk, and sustain high speeds, allowing pilots to engage on their own terms rather than being forced into disadvantageous maneuvers. The first prototype took to the skies on June 26, 1942, mere weeks after the pivotal Battle of Midway, where Wildcats had held the line but at great cost. Contrary to some popular myths, the Hellcat wasn't directly reverse-engineered from a captured Zero. That famous Akutan Zero, crash-landed on a remote Alaskan island in June 1942, was tested later and provided valuable insights into the enemy's weaknesses, like its vulnerability to fire due to lacking self-sealing fuel tanks and armor. But Grumman's team had already locked in the basic design. They focused on building a fighter that was tough, easy to fly, and optimized for carrier operations. The Hellcat featured a low-mounted wing for better visibility during landings, a wide-track landing gear to handle rough carrier decks, and folding wings for compact storage below deck on aircraft carriers. These practical features made it a favorite among pilots, who had to operate in the challenging environment of naval aviation, where every takeoff and landing carried inherent risks. From the outset, the Hellcat fell under the U.S. Navy's Bureau of Aeronautics, specifically tailored as a carrier-based fighter interceptor. Its primary mission was to defend the fleet from enemy bombers and fighters, escort strike aircraft on missions, and achieve air superiority over battle zones. But as the war progressed, this role expanded dramatically. Pilots found themselves strafing ground targets, providing close air support for Marines on islands, and even experimenting with night fighting. One important detail stands out. The aviators who strapped into these cockpits were naval pilots, trained rigorously in carrier operations, aerial gunnery, and formation tactics. They weren't Army Air Force pilots accustomed to land-based strips. These were men who could land on a pitching deck in the dark and that precision flying translated into deadly effectiveness in combat. As we'll see later, that training edge was a game-changer, enabling them to exploit the Hellcat's strengths while minimizing its limitations in real-world scenarios. By late 1942, production ramped up at Grumman's Bethpage, New York factory. The first operational Hellcats reached Fighter Squadron 9, VF9, aboard the USS Essex in February 1943. They were primed for action just as the Allies launched their island-hopping campaign across the Pacific. The Hellcats' combat debut came on August 31, 1943, during strikes on Marcus Island, a tiny Japanese outpost. VF-5 from the USS Yorktown sent Hellcats to strafe airfields and destroy seaplanes on the water. No aerial opposition that day, but the pilots reported back on the plane's stability in dives and its heavy armament. 6.50 caliber Browning machine guns, 3 in each wing, with 400 rounds per gun. It was a solid start, proving the Hellcat could deliver ordnance accurately while maintaining control, which built confidence among the squadrons transitioning from older aircraft. Early battles and growing firepower. The Hellcat's design philosophy clicked immediately with the squadrons. Pilots raved about its forgiving handling. Characteristics. Standing about 13 feet tall with landing gear extended, it sat low and stable, making carrier landings less treacherous than with the Corsair, which had a nasty tendency to bounce due to its long nose. The Hellcat's wing loading was moderate, allowing for decent turn rates, though not as tight as the Zeros at low speeds. In early encounters when Zeros did appear, the Hellcat's superior speed, up to 380 miles per hour in level flight, and dive acceleration allowed pilots to dictate the terms of engagement. One early drawback was the R2800's fuel consumption. Without external drop tanks, patrol times were limited to about 2 hours, which could be a problem over vast ocean expanses. To address this, drop tanks were quickly integrated, extending range and enabling longer missions that kept pressure on Japanese forces. As production series advanced, from the F6F3 to the improved F6F5, enhancements rolled in steadily. Armor plating around the cockpit, oil cooler, and engine was increased to a total of 212 pounds, providing vital protection against Japanese 7.7mm machine gun fire. Gun sights were upgraded to the Mark 8 reflector sight for better lead computation. A water methanol injection system was added to later models, boosting horsepower to 2,200 for emergency bursts, which helped in rapid climbs to intercept incoming raids. Crew chiefs also started fitting rocket rails under the wings, allowing the Hellcat to carry up to 6 5-inch high-velocity aircraft rockets, HVARs, for ground attack roles. These additions turned the Hellcat into a multi-role fighter capable of not just air-to-air combat, but also supporting ground troops by destroying enemy installations, vehicles, and fortifications. But the most transformative changes were yet to unfold as the air war intensified, with pilots and engineers continually adapting to the evolving battlefield. When the Central Pacific Offensive kicked off in earnest with the Gilbert Islands campaign in November 1943, the Hellcat reverted to its foundational role, providing combat air patrol cap over the fleet and escorting bombers. And it performed admirably. During the invasion of Tarawa, Hellcats from Task Force 50 clashed with Japanese land-based fighters scrambling from nearby bases. On November 23rd, a swarm of about 40 Zeros and Key 4-3 Oscars attacked the carriers. Hellcats, directed by shipboard radar and fighter direction officers, intercepted them at high altitude. In the ensuing melee, American pilots claimed 30 kills for the loss of just one Hellcat. Lieutenant Commander Edward "Butch" O'Hare, the Navy's first ace from the Wildcat days, was tragically lost in a night action during this battle, but his squadron mates in Hellcats avenged him by downing several tormentors. This early success demonstrated how the Hellcat's combination of power and pilot skill could turn the tide against numerically superior foes. The challenges mounted as the Allies pushed toward the Marshall Islands, with Japanese reinforcements pouring in, improved A6M50s with better speed and armament, plus the agile Nakajima Ki 44 Shoki. These arrived in numbers far exceeding intelligence estimates. Early American fighters like the Wildcat had struggled against the Zero's agility, but the Hellcat's robustness shone through. Still, issues arose. Poor Japanese pilot training and chronic fuel shortages hampered their effectiveness initially, yet the raw threat was palpable. The Navy demanded a counterpunch, and fast. This came in the form of refined tactics and the F6F-3's widespread deployment, where the airframe remained largely unchanged. But pilot training emphasized energy-fighting techniques over traditional turning dogfights. How it became Japan's aerial nightmare. One of those countermeasures materialized in the refined tactics and the F6F-3's widespread deployment. Instructors taught boom and zoom. Use altitude advantage to dive on the enemy. Unleash a burst from those 6.5s, then zoom, climb away to reset. Avoid getting sucked into slow-speed maneuvers where the Zero's lightweight and large ailerons gave it the edge. These Hellcats entered the fray just as the Solomons campaign wrapped up and the drive to the Marianas began. From this juncture, the Hellcats' role evolved irreversibly. It began as a defensive shield for carriers, but morphed into an offensive juggernaut, systematically dismantling Japanese air forces through coordinated strikes and relentless pursuit. The Hellcat excelled in carrier-based operations across the endless blue of the Pacific. Its impressive range, over 1,000 miles with drop tanks, enabled long-range fighter sweeps ahead of invasions, catching Japanese planes on the ground or in the air. And in that capacity, it was devastatingly effective. Take the February 1944 raid on Truk Lagoon, Japan's Pearl Harbor of the Pacific. Hellcats from 9 carriers launched pre-dawn strikes, destroying over 200 aircraft on the ground and in dogfights. Pilots like Lieutenant Eugene Valencia of VF-9 claimed multiple kills, using the Hellcat's stability to line up deflection shots. Then came the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944, dubbed the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Facing off against 500 Japanese carrier and land-based planes, nearly 450 Hellcats from Task Force 58 obliterated the attackers. Radar-guided intercepts allowed Hellcats to ambush incoming waves, resulting in over 300 enemy losses for just 29 American planes downed, most to anti-aircraft fire or operational accidents, not enemy fighters. This battle marked a turning point, decimating Japan's experienced pilot cadre and leaving their air forces in disarray. U.S. Navy after-action reports highlighted the Hellcats' prowess. One squadron, VF-15 aboard USS Essex, tallied 68 kills in a single day during the Turkey Shoot. Such lopsided ratios were unheard of in earlier phases of the war, but became standard for Hellcat units. The secrets, superior tactics, were key. Formations like the thatch weave, where pairs of fighters scissored to cover each other's tails. The bubble canopy offered excellent all-around visibility, spotting foes miles away. But the human element loomed largest. These naval aviators underwent intensive gunnery practice, firing thousands of rounds in training. Their discipline and teamwork turned potential scraps into one-sided ambushes. The statistics are mind-boggling. Hellcats accounted for 5,163 aerial victories by war's end, representing 75% of all U.S. Navy air-to-air kills in the Pacific. That's more than any single Allied fighter type. Against the Zero specifically, the kill ratio was 13-1. Overall, it soared to 19-1. These figures underscore how the Hellcat not only matched, but exceeded expectations in combat effectiveness. Many of the war's top aces forged their reputations in Hellcats. Commander David McCampbell, the Navy's all-time leading ace with 34 confirmed kills, achieved all of them in the F6F. During the Battle of Leyte Gulf in October 1944, he single-handedly downed 9 Japanese planes in one 90-minute sortie, a record that stands to this day. His wingman, Lieutenant Roy Rushing, added 6 more, making their pair responsible for 15 kills that morning. McCampbell later recounted, "I saw a formation of about 40 Zeros and Vals below me. I dove in, picked off the leader, then worked my way through the group." Another standout was Lieutenant Alexander Vrashew of VF-6, who bagged 19 victories, including 6 Aichi D-3 Aval dive bombers in just 8 minutes during the Turkey Shoot. "They were sitting ducks," he said. "The Hellcats' guns just chewed them up." Cecil Harris of VF-18 scored 24 kills, often using the plane's dive speed to escape after strikes. These stories illustrate the synergy between the aircraft's capabilities and the pilot's expertise. Subscribe if you like the video. Turning stories like these that keep history alive, and we've got more coming. These aces wielded the same armament as later Wildcats, 6-150 caliber machine guns, but with improved ammunition belts carrying incendiary and armor-piercing rounds, plus better harmonization for convergence at 300 yards. This setup outperformed even cannon-armed fighters in sustained bursts. When positioned advantageously, a Hellcat in expert hands was untouchable. Its 50 caliber slugs could penetrate up to 20 millimeters of armor at 500 yards, sufficient to shred the lightly protected Zeros, Oscars, and even tougher late war models like the Nakajima-Ki 84 Hayate. The gun's reliability and high rate of fire allowed pilots to deliver devastating volleys before disengaging, maximizing their chances of survival. To expand on this dominance, consider the Hellcat's role in specific campaigns. In the Solomons earlier on, though mostly Wildcat territory, transitioning squadrons like VF-33 used Hellcats to escort SBD Dauntless dive bombers against Japanese shipping. One notable action was the November 1943 Bougainville strikes, where Hellcats tangled with Zeros over Empress, Augusta Bay, claiming 18 for no losses. Pilots noted the Hellcat's ability to absorb hits. Self-sealing tanks prevented fuel fires, and the armored windshield deflected bullets that would have killed in a Zero. This durability saved countless lives and allowed pilots to press attacks even when damaged. As the war shifted to the Philippines, Hellcats supported amphibious landings. During the Battle of Leyte Gulf, the largest naval battle in history, Hellcats from the Third Fleet repelled kamikaze attacks, downing dozens of suicide planes. The Japanese introduced desperate measures: radar-equipped night fighters and massed kamikaze swarms. Hellcats adapted with the F6F 5N variant, fitted with AN/APS-6 radar in a wing pod for nocturnal intercepts. One such pilot, Commander William Gus Thomas, scored the first radar-assisted night kill in a Hellcat over Okinawa. This adaptation highlighted the platform's versatility, evolving from daytime dogfighter to all-weather interceptor as the war demanded. The flaws that got pilots in trouble. By 1944, the Hellcat had matured into a formidable war machine. Weighing in at around 12,500 pounds fully loaded, it balanced speed, firepower, and endurance. The frontal armor and self-sealing tanks allowed it to return from missions peppered with holes. One famous Hellcat from VF-8 came back from truck with over 200 bullet holes yet landed safely. Some pilots jury-rigged extra ammunition boxes or even .50 caliber gun pods for more firepower, though these mods were more about boosting confidence than practical gains. Despite these strengths, no plane is perfect, and vulnerabilities emerged that pilots had to navigate carefully. At low speeds, below 200 knots, the Hellcat's heavier build made it less maneuverable than the Zero, which could turn inside it with ease. This led to losses in prolonged dogfights if pilots ignored doctrine and tried to match turns. To counter, tactics like the thatch weave, or beam defense, were drilled relentlessly. Side and rear armor was thinner, making the plane susceptible to flanking attacks from Japanese 20mm cannons, which could ignite wing fuel tanks if not sealed properly. Night operations posed another risk until the -5N models. Early Hellcats relied on moonlight or ship searchlights, leaving them blind to sneaky approaches. Roof protection was minimal, exposing pilots to strafing from above or flak bursts. In urban island fighting, like over Iwo Jima, Japanese anti-aircraft guns exploited this. Both issues intensified as kamikazes became prevalent from late 1944 onward, diving unpredictably from clouds. After the Philippine Sea debacle, where Japan lost over 600 pilots, the Imperial Navy shifted to suicide tactics, forcing Hellcats into reactive intercepts. Navy leadership prioritized Hellcat production following that turkey shoot. Factories churned out over 1,000 per month at peak, far outpacing the Corsair, which suffered from carrier landing issues early on. The F6F-5 introduced a smoother cowling for reduced drag, optional 20mm cannons in place of 2.50 and underwing hardpoints for 1,000-pound bombs. The British Royal Navy's Fleet Air Arm, adopted 1,263 Hellcats as the Hellcat Mark I and II, using them in the Atlantic against U-boats and in the Pacific against Japanese holdouts. One British ace, Lieutenant Commander Ronald Cuthbert Hay, a Royal Marine, scored 5 kills in Hellcats during operations off Sumatra. The design philosophy influenced other aircraft. Post-war, Hellcats were converted to drones for target practice, and experiments added air-to-ground missiles. But among contemporaries, the Hellcat remained remarkably cost-effective. Priced at about $35,000 to $50,000 per unit, depending on sources, it was half the cost of a Corsair and a quarter of a P-51 Mustang. For the price of one high-end fighter, the Navy could field 2 Hellcats, amplifying air power exponentially. Why Hellcat losses mounted, despite dominance? But with all that success, you might puzzle over this. If the Hellcat was so superior, why did operational and combat losses climb so high toward the war's end, with thousands written off? The answer lies in the grueling nature of its deployment. As the Allies closed in on Japan proper, Hellcats were thrust into relentless, high-intensity operations. Over Iwo Jima in February 1945, they flew continuous caps, strafing caves and bunkers, but faced ferocious flak and hidden zeros. They inflicted massive damage, destroying hundreds of planes, but at a cost. Fatigue set in, accidents rose on crowded carriers. Pilot exhaustion became a silent enemy, leading to errors in judgment during takeoffs, landings, and combat. The Okinawa campaign in April 1945 turned into a meat grinder. Kamikaze attacks numbered in the thousands. Hellcats downed many, but some broke through, slamming into ships and forcing fighters to dodge debris. Outcomes were Pyrrhic. Lines held, but squadrons depleted. Pilots often ditched damaged planes over water rather than risk capture, spiking loss figures. Deployment patterns exacerbated this. Carrier air groups rotated through hot zones, from the Marianas to the Philippines to Okinawa, seeing the fiercest action repeatedly. Hellcats served as fire brigades, rushed to intercept raids or support invasions. In many instances, they acted as decoys, drawing out Japanese defenders for bombers to strike. As disposable assets in a war of attrition, they bore the brunt. Worse still, they were pushed into unintended roles. Low-altitude strafing over enemy airfields without adequate escort, where ground fire shredded wings. Coordination faltered at times, with little support from Army P-38s or Marine Corsairs. Air superiority was contested. Japanese radar on islands like Formosa vectored interceptors effectively early on. In these chaotic furballs, Hellcats fell to ambushes, portable anti-aircraft guns, or overwhelming numbers. A darker facet, the single-seat cockpit meant one hit could doom the pilot outright, no crew to assist or bail out together like in multi-engine bombers. Late-war pilot shortages led to rushed training. Replacements fresh from stateside schools faced veterans' cunning, often with subpar equipment like worn engines. By 1945, the Hellcat, conceived before Pearl Harbor, confronted evolved threats. The Kawasaki Ki-100 with better high-altitude performance, or the Mitsubishi J-2M Raiden Interceptor. Japanese improvements like enhanced 37mm cannons took a toll on even the sturdiest airframes. Of the 12,275 Hellcats built, over 5,000 were lost to all causes: combat, accidents, operational wear. Yet, remarkably, they pressed on until Japan's surrender. One poignant example: during the final strikes on the Japanese homeland in July-August 1945, Hellcats from Task Force 38 ravaged airfields, claiming the last kills of the war. These missions, flown under constant threat of interception, symbolized the Hellcats' enduring resilience in the face of mounting odds. Notable events and aces' stories expanded. To flesh this out, let's linger on key battles and personal tales that highlight the Hellcats' impact. Start with the truck raid, February 16th to 17th, 1944. Over 400 Hellcats participated, sweeping the lagoon's anchorages. Lieutenant Junior Grade Hamilton McWhorter, the third of VF-9, became the first Hellcat ace, downing 5 Zeros in one day. The plane handled like a dream in the dive, he recalled. But flak was thick. One Hellcat returned so damaged its pilot, Ensign Don Brandt, earned the nickname Swiss cheese for the holes. This raid not only crippled Japanese naval power, but also showcased the Hellcat's ability to operate in large formations with devastating results. Fast forward to Leyte Gulf, October 24th to 25th, 1944. Amid naval chaos, McCampbell's VF-15 launched from USS Essex. Spotting a massive formation, he led the charge. I rolled in on a Zero, hit him with a burst. He exploded. Then another, and another. Low on fuel and ammo, he nursed his Hellcat back, landing with just 5 gallons left. Vratsiu's exploits at the Turkey Shoot were equally cinematic. Diving through clouds, he picked off dive bombers one by one, his guns jamming only after the 6th kill. These accounts reveal the intense, high-stakes nature of aerial combat, where split-second decisions and the Hellcat's reliability made all the difference. In lesser-known actions, Hellcats shone too. During the Formosa raids in October 1944, they claimed 500 Japanese planes destroyed. Pilot Lieutenant Eugene A. Valencia devised the mowing machine tactic. 4 Hellcats in a loose formation, rotating attacks to keep pressure constant. His flying circus squadron racked up 50 kills without loss. British Hellcats had their moments. In April 1945, off Sakishima Gunto, HMS Indomitable's Hellcats intercepted kamikazes, with Sub-Lieutenant R.H. Reynolds scoring 3 in one sortie. In the Atlantic, they hunted U-boats, using rockets to sink surfaced subs. These diverse operations underscore the Hellcat's global reach and adaptability beyond the Pacific theater. Comparisons to rivals, Zero, Corsair, and more, stacking the Hellcat against contemporaries reveals its strengths. Versus the Zero, top speed 391 miles per hour to 331 miles per hour. Climb rate 3,500 feet per minute to 3,100 feet per minute. Armament 6. 50s, 2,400 rounds total versus 220 millimeters and 27.7 millimeters. Limited ammo. The Hellcat's armor and tanks made it survivable. Zeros burned easily. Drawback, turn radius. Zeros was tighter at low speeds, but U.S. pilots avoided that trap through disciplined tactics. Against the Corsair, similar speed and power, but Hellcat was easier to land on carriers, with lower stall speed, 84 miles per hour versus 89. Corsair had folding wings issues early, Hellcat none. Kill ratios, Hellcat 19-1, Corsair 11-1, though Corsairs flew more ground attacks. The Hellcat's simplicity in operations gave it an edge in fleet integration. To the P-51 Mustang, Hellcat lacked the range, 1,500 miles max, but was built for carriers with reinforced gear. Mustang excelled over Europe. Hellcat owned the Pacific. Advantages: docile handling, quick roll rate, improved on -5 models, massive production. Disadvantages: thirstier engine, less agile at altitude than some Japanese latecomers. Overall, the Hellcat's design prioritized practicality and mass deployability, making it ideal for the naval war. Technical deep dive, design and variants. Delving deeper, the Hellcat's airframe was a masterpiece of simplicity. The fuselage, 33 feet long with a 42-foot wingspan, used aluminum alloy for strength. The R2800 engine, with 18 cylinders in 2 rows, provided reliability. Many ran for hundreds of hours without overhaul. Propeller, Hamilton Standard, hydromatic, 3-bladed, constant speed. This robust construction ensured the aircraft could withstand the rigors of carrier life, including salt corrosion and repeated catapults. Variants included F6F3, first production 4,402 built, F6, F5, 7,870 built, with low drag cowl, stronger tail, F6, F5N, night fighter 1,434 built, radar, F6, F-3, P-/5P, photo recon, cameras in fuselage. Each iteration built on the last, incorporating feedback from the front lines to enhance performance and survivability. Post-war, Hellcats served in Korea as drones, but World War II was their glory, leaving a legacy of engineering excellence. Legacy and final reflections. Despite the brutal toll, the F6F Hellcat endures as World War II's premier naval fighter, a rugged, effective solution that delivered when it counted. It may not grab headlines like the glamorous Mustang or iconic Spitfire, but in sheer victories, battlefield versatility, and mass production, it stands unrivaled. Silently, without fanfare, it became Japan's worst aerial nightmare and America's guardian angel over the waves. The Hellcat's story is one of innovation under pressure, heroic pilots, and the relentless pursuit of victory, reminding us of the human ingenuity that shaped the outcome of the war. Subscribe if you liked the video. We're uncovering more untold tales from the skies.